My name is Scott Hurrey, and I am the Director of Developer Relations at Box. And so one of the things that my team gets to do is really experiment with AI. Anytime something new and cool comes out, we get to build a demo, maybe do a video. So it's been a lot of fun for us the last year or so, really diving deep into some of these advanced concepts that we're seeing every day coming to us through the AI ecosystem. So one of the questions that I get a lot as I am talking at conferences like this or going to hackathons, why is Box here? If you're not familiar with Box, we are a content storage engine that lives in the cloud. But because we have all of that content, we have a lot of insights that you can get from across things that before the generative AI revolution were really hard to get. So IDC did a survey a few years ago to really dig into the enterprise and what is the makeup of the data that they have. And as you can see, 10% of it is structured. So that's your typical things that live in a Snowflake database or Postgres or things that you can easily query. But 90% of the things that the enterprise has access to is unstructured data. That's Word documents, PowerPoints, things that historically have been pretty hard to get insights into without somebody sitting there and reading through it and pulling them out. And for us, we think AI is super important because we have more than 120,000 customers. We have more than an exabyte of content that lives in our storage system. And so how do we get companies from large banks to small loan origination firms the power that they need to get from their content? And so one of the things that we've did, obviously we built our own AI engine that sits at the heart of Box. But we also realized developers like you are the ones who are really building the cool things. And whether you're using everything in Box or you are building some cool thing where Box is just one small part of it, we want to make it sure that you can get everything that you need from your content. And so this is kind of where we're seeing people now. A year ago, maybe 2 years ago, people started to build assistants. Everybody was talking about chatbots. Now we're seeing people building AI agents for specific tasks. I have this repetitive thing that I'm constantly doing. I can use AI to automate that thing and make my life a little bit easier. And I think that's where we are today in the enterprise space. But where we see people going is these autonomous AI agents. They've got a whole workforce that can do tasks, make decisions, do all of the things that you have a bunch of people sitting around in a meeting trying to decide. Let AI and the power of generative AI do that. So as I mentioned, obviously if you're using Box, if all your content is in Box, we've got you covered. We have a thing called Box Hubs where you can have 20,000 files in a hub, and we maintain the vector store underneath it for you. Update a new file, change a file, we sync that automatically. Simple API call, you can get an insight. We have Compose agent where you can compose text. We have a question and answer agent where you can ask a question and get your answer. But what if Box is only one of your systems? In enterprise, you might have 100 different systems. Salesforce, Workday, Box. Maybe you're using Google Drive also. Maybe you've got some other systems. And you want to ask a question, and you want to get your answer, and you don't care where the answer comes from. Because of this, we've spent a lot of time building partnerships with many AI companies, many enterprise companies. How do we get Box data and your data together so that you can get your insights? Just today, we launched a cookbook with Grok. They've got a responses API. Our cookbook will help you bring the Box MCP server into that environment so that you can easily get those answers. We've done a ton of work with Pinecone, which you might think is a little weird. We've got all the content. Why would we give that content to Pinecone? But again, If you've got 10 different systems and you want all that data together so that you can easily search, then while we would love for you to keep all your content in Box, we also realize it's your content. You should be able to put it where you need it. And then finally, I just want to mention LangChain. We built a Python LangChain library last year, July, I think. We just released a JavaScript version. So if you're building on LangChain, you need access to Box, we've got you covered. Excuse me. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. You saw in the title, we're talking about A2A and MCP and how you can use those tools to scale your AI for the enterprise. And so today we're going to look at a very specific example. We've got some invoices in Box. We need to extract key data from those invoices so that we can then process them down the line. We can check to make sure every invoice has a PO associated with. We can push that data into a third-party system so that you can run your reporting, things like that. So I think where a lot of people start, you can build that yourself, right? You can build a tool that uses the Box API, goes out and downloads those files, a PDF reader that will allow you to pull those together, get the information out. You can extract it with an LLM, then you can store it in your database. This is cool if you're building a proof of concept. This is cool if every document is always the same, so when you're extracting, you don't have to have all of these complex rules that say, find this here, and then you get a different invoice and it's different and it breaks your whole system. It's also not scalable. Every time the API changes, you have to go in, you have to update your code. It's fragile for the reasons that I just mentioned. It's also inflexible. You've built this thing specifically for this one task and that's all it can do. And it's also pretty slow. If your PDF is a scanned PDF, you have to perform OCR on it to transform it into something that the LLM can use. So one step that you can take to make it a little bit more scalable is institute MCP. We're probably all familiar with MCP in this room. It's something that I've grown to fall in love with. As I mentioned, we do demos constantly, sometimes 2 or 3 a week. With the MCP server, it's a matter of configuring one connector, and now I've got the power of Box already in my AI agent. So you can do this without having to write a single line of custom integration code. Also, by using MCP, you automatically get new things as they hit the MCP server. We have 2 MCP servers. One is open source. That's the one my team uses a lot, and it's got a ton of stuff in it because every time we want to demo something, we add it. We also have a remote official product, MCP, and that follows all of the engineering best practices that we follow for all of our products. So obviously we recommend in the enterprise you use the remote one, but we do have the open source available. The other thing by using Box, sort of our core value proposition, is the enterprise grade security and compliance that you get. And by using our MCP server, we maintain that. No one can accidentally get access to the files they're not supposed to see. And we do that through token and users, and any permission management you add inside the product flows through the API to the MCP server. And this allows you to focus your code on the interesting problem that you're actually trying to solve. You don't have to worry about how do I find files in Box. We got a tool for that. You don't have to worry about how do I extract key value pairs. We have a tool for that. So by doing that, you can focus on the surrounding bits that makes your integration or your application unique. And then finally, I think what we're seeing is to truly scale, ATA is the best option. And so this is the ability to create a bunch of agents. Each of those agents is purpose-built. Those agents have one job and one job only, and then you have an orchestrator sitting on top that decides what agent does what and in what order. Sometimes it might not use all your agents, sometimes it might use them twice. But by doing this, it allows you to modularize everything. So this agent is really good at this one thing and this one thing only. One, I think, other interesting bit of this is you can solve really complex problems, but you can also add new agents as you run into new things. You want to add something, you want to do this new thing, build a new agent. You don't have to adjust your other agents. They still do their one job. And then with A2A, the orchestrator agent can dynamically discover other agents. So as you add, you don't have to do any glue code to tie it all together. And then one thing I think, particularly with MCP server in the A2A space, and thinking about how we scale this, one thing I can't stress enough is make sure you are limiting your agent to the MCP tools that it needs. I think we've all probably put too many MCP servers in our Claude code or in our code generation tool, and then found that the agent couldn't figure out which one to use. So always be thoughtful about which specific tools are available to that agent that they need to accomplish the one goal that they have. And so now I'm going to tempt the live demo gods, and we are going to take a look at a very simple implementation of A2A. Again, thinking back to what I said we're trying to accomplish, we've got invoices, we need to extract some key value pairs from that. And so what we've built is essentially 3 agents. So we've got our orchestrator agent. Basically with the doc string for this orchestrator agent, we're telling the LLM how great of an orchestrator agent it is. And then we're giving it some instructions on what agents are available to it, how to use those agents, and some examples of prompts that it might expect to see. So pretty straightforward. We're using the agent cards through A2A from Google. We've also got a files agent, and this agent's job is very simple. Based on the prompt that it's given, it needs to go into Box and it needs to find the files in a specific folder. This folder could have 1 billion invoices in it. In this case, it has 5 for ease of demo. But it allows you to very quickly find just the files that you need and then process them. So this agent returns an array. The array contains file IDs and file names. And then the orchestrator will pass it to the extraction agent, which again is purpose-built. We're telling the LLM how great it is at data extraction. We're telling it which tools to use from the Box MCP server. And by doing so, we're able to quickly extract key value pairs from our invoice. Again, for simplicity of demo, we're not pulling a whole ton of information. We're getting the client name who submitted the invoice amount, and the product name of the product. And then at the end, we'll do a little bit of a sort of rounding up reporting, very basic, but shows the capabilities of A2A and how you can build these purpose-built agents. So fingers crossed. We're gonna run it. And so the first thing you should see is it's validating some of the information. It's got the API key. You can see what model we're using. We're starting up our agent servers that are available through localhost and a specific port. And so now, if the internet is working, you can see we've gotten a JSON object that has our file ID, file names. And so that will be passed to our extract agent, which you can now see is slowly extracting the data that we need. We're getting the client, the amount, and the product, as we mentioned. And we're now on document 4. And now on document 5. I should have done 3 for the demo. And now we're complete. And you can see all of these were for the same client, Acme Incorporated. You can see the total amount. And you can see that it processed 5 documents. Now, again, this was a very simple demonstration just so that we could show how it can work with very specific parameters. But you can imagine having an LLM as a judge agent. You could build in human in the loop so that somebody can check these values before it gets written to your database. You could have a reporting agent that builds a report. Thinking of box ideas, we've got a document generation API. You could take this information and generate a PDF that has a report that then gets shared to your CFO so that they can check to make sure that you've done your work. There's a ton of things that you can do with A2A. And again, it allows you to focus on those very specific bits. So you can have one team who only cares about the data extraction piece. You can have another engineering team that only cares about writing the report and generating the file. And so by modularizing everything into custom and specifically built agents, you make it much easier for your team to iterate quickly. So there's a couple architecture patterns that I think we think about when we think about A2A and the power that it can give your organization. Number one, it gives you the capability to add pluggable tools and models. If there's a new AI capability you want to add, you just plug it in. If the MCP server gets some new cool tool that you want to take advantage of, it's plugged in. You just add that to the list of tools that your agent needs. If you want to build another agent, you build another agent. It's a great way to continue to iterate, to continue to innovate without messing too much with what you know already works. MCP also gives you a single integration point. So again, you don't have to write a bunch of custom API calls to do the things you want. For instance, in our MCP server, there's a tool that allows you to get a markdown version of a file. In reality, that's like 5 API calls that you have to make in order to get to that part where you can get that markdown file. In this case, it's a tool. So you just call the tool. You don't have to worry about having all of those different pieces. Also, I'll say if you're building MCP servers, I've seen a lot of people, they build it where it's basically a mapping of their API spec. We don't think that's the right way to do it. You should think about what the agent might need to do and provide the tools that allow it to do that. Sometimes that means it's a single API point, but there's 3 different tools that call it in slightly different ways. Sometimes you're combining a bunch of a bunch of API calls into one tool. It's really a chance for you to think about how it can best work rather than let me just map everything in my API to a tool. Excuse me. As I mentioned, it also allows you to separate concerns. You've got an agent that does one thing, it does it really well. Nobody else has to know how that agent works except for the team that's maintaining that agent, but they can take advantage of it from their tool or from their agent or from some other workflow that they're building using the same agents that you've made available. And so with agents, you can really separate those concerns so that you don't have to worry about people tweaking your stuff and messing up your stuff because they're trying to make their stuff work. It also allows you to build security and governance. Like I said, one of the core value propositions of Box is just how much we focus on security and compliance. Many of our customers are in highly regulated industries that have very specific security features that they need. And if you're making the call from your agent through the Box MCP server, we are maintaining that security for you. You send us a token, that token is associated with either a user or a service account. And that user or service account can only ever access the data that belongs to that user or that service account. And that way, the same people can use the same set of agents, but they only get the data that they have access to. Finally, for scaling and load management, I don't know if any of you have worked with a company called Autonomy. But we did some pretty interesting experiments with autonomy in a couple of our customers. With autonomy, you actually build one agent, you configure a YAML file, and you can scale that agent almost infinitely. And so imagine having 1,000 files, you use autonomy, you spin up 1,000 agents, though each agent is assigned to one file and it all runs in parallel. So instead of 30 minutes, it takes like 4 minutes. These are things that you can do with agents in today's modern infrastructure that can really help you. What happened? There we go. That can really help you scale and get your work done much quicker. And then finally, upgradability and iteration sort of ties into the other things we've talked about, but essentially, anytime something new comes up, you can easily add it to the agent that needs it. You can easily plug in new architectures, new products, new technologies without having to mess with the core of your AI agent system. So if you are interested in this stuff, we do have a course on deep learning. Thank you, Deep Learning, for inviting us. Ben Koos is our Chief Technology Officer. He might be the smartest person I've ever met in my life. And he does a very good job of going through the stuff that we just talked about, but with hands-on exercises. We're hoping to do a follow-up to take it kind of to the next level. And hopefully that'll be coming soon. But with that, any questions?
Thanks, Scott.
Sure.
We have 5 minutes for questions.
All right. I must have been so clear that there's no questions.
Oh, in the back.
Sorry, this may not be so specific to your talk in particular, but you talked a lot about A2A, and the previous talk talked about Strands SDK.
Mm-hmm.
There's also an OpenAI Agents SDK. As developers, how do we weigh the benefits or drawbacks of all of these open source agents SDKs? Why do you prefer A2A over the other options out there?
Sure, it's a great question. I think a little bit of it is personal preference. Certainly in technology, you might work at a company that only loves OpenAI, in which case the Agents SDK is the best way to go. Maybe you're using Grok, and so you can use Grok's new responses API to make a bunch of agents. I've certainly used Strands. I've used Agents SDK from OpenAI. I've used Responses API from Anthropic. I've used them all, and I think they're all pretty great. So a lot of it, I think, is personal preference and what works best in your environment. Like, I don't think you should switch to one just because you saw a talk on it if you're building everything somewhere else.
So I was attracted to this topic because that enterprise AI.
Mm-hmm.
What the demo, or do you have any experience? Or I bet you guys have like an enterprise level agents running in your enterprise lab and infrastructure. So anything to share about the challenges, risks when you're running such a I suppose there's a towards customer, right? Customer facing.
Sure. No, I think one of the biggest risks is around security. If I build a chatbot and my customer uses that chatbot and they get the wrong answer, I'm in trouble. And so you need to build in things that help you ensure that an answer you give is the right answer. I think it's super helpful to provide citations that tell you where that answer came from so you can validate that yourself. And then I think also, again, making sure that the agent is built in such a way that it does one job really well. One of the things that we do constantly, anytime a new model comes out, we have a set eval set that we run. And so it helps us understand what is this model really good at, specifically to the kind of content that's in Box versus what is it not as good at. And so then we're able to build agents on the right model, depending on what the use case is. And then finally, I think, again, it's about making sure nobody ever accesses anything that they're not supposed to access. If I've got a document in my Box account and that document has a bunch of personal information about the person I just hired, and somebody from finance asks a question and gets that person's personal information, that's a no-go. That's instant death to AI. And so as you're building these things, security has to be at the top of mind. Make sure that nobody can ever accidentally access something that doesn't belong to them. Excuse me. So for Box, there's a number of different steps that we take. Number one, when you ask a question, the first thing we do is check, does that user, does that service account have access to that file? And if not, we reject it out of hand. Once that has been done, then we feel like you're only getting access to the content that you're supposed to have. But that's the very first step, is access control. It's by code. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take one last question over here.
Fantastic talk, thank you so much. I want to stress on the same point on security and governance built in. Especially I'm coming from Europe, in Germany, and it's
Sure.
in the head when you talk about enterprise AI. So can you tell us more, is it only access control you're having or more governance stuff?
Excuse me. So with Box, you get governance out of the box. So anything that could negatively affect how it's governed, we also take into account.
Does the AI Act would be part of it?
I'm sorry?
Have the AI Act as well part of it or not really?
So we do all of our security checks before AI gets involved.